After 21 years, my wife came home glowing. But the glow wasn't for me. You know what's funny about betrayal? It doesn't always smell like smoke and mirrors. Sometimes, it smells like expensive Parisian perfume and looks like a glow you haven't seen on your wife in a decade. They say the truth will set you free. But in my experience, the truth is a sledgehammer that levels your entire life before you can even find the exit. My name is Clayton Mooney. Most folks around our corner of Ohio just call me Clay. I'm 46 years old, and for 21 years, I was convinced I was the luckiest man alive. I'm the owner of Mooney Motors. I started with a patch of dirt, a few rusted-out trade-ins, and a $5,000 loan from my old man. I built that business into the most successful dealership in the region. I did it through honesty, a rare commodity in the car business. I thought that same honesty was the foundation of my home. My wife, Vivien, was the woman behind the man. We met when I was 25. She was a marketing coordinator back then, with auburn hair and green eyes that could make a man forget his own name. We built a life, a real one. We had Asher, who's 17 now, our star quarterback with a full ride to Ohio State. Then came Chloe, 13 and sharp enough to cut glass. And Benjamin, our 9-year-old, the kind of kid who'd rather build a robot than play catch. We had the house on Maple Street, paid off. We had the summer trips to the Gulf. We had the retirement accounts. We were the American dream, or at least the version of it you see in brochures. But success has a way of making a man blink. You work 60-hour weeks. You come home tired, and you assume the silence in the house is peace, not a mounting pressure. The shift started when Vivien climbed the corporate ladder at Henderson Associates. She became a senior marketing director, handling the big fish clients. We were a power couple. She did the marketing for Mooney Motors. I handled the metal. We were a team, or so I thought. Then came the corporate training seminar in Chicago. 5 days. That's all it took. 5 days for the woman I'd known for nearly half her life to evaporate. When she walked through the door after that trip, she was different. She was radiant. She looked like she'd spent 5 days at a spa, not in a windowless conference room. Her hair was sleeker. Her clothes were more expensive. And she had an energy, a hum, that didn't belong to our suburban life. "Hey, honey, how was the trip?" I asked, looking up from Benjamin's math homework. "Oh, it was incredible, Clay," she said. But she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at her phone, her thumb dancing across the screen with a speed that felt frantic. It really opened my eyes to new possibilities. I didn't say a word. I just watched her. I watched her roll her suitcase into the laundry room and close the door. Vivien was the type of woman who unpacked the minute she got home. It was her ritual, but that night she left the bag locked. She said she was too tired to talk. She said she needed to process the leadership strategies she'd learned. I sat in my recliner, the math book heavy in my lap, and I felt a cold draft in a room with all the windows closed. I didn't know it yet, but the woman I'd married hadn't come back from Chicago. A stranger had taken her place, and she was already planning my funeral. The weeks following Chicago were a masterclass in emotional distancing. Vivien was there, but she was a ghost. She moved through the house like a guest in a hotel she was planning to check out of. The phone became an extension of her hand. It was always face down, always within reach. Even in the shower, she'd tuck it under a towel. I'm a car guy. I know when an engine is knocking before the check engine light even flickers. I asked her, "Viv, who's been texting you so much?" "Just work." "Clay," she'd say, her cheeks flushing a guilty pink. "Corporate clients, high stakes. You wouldn't understand the pressure." That was the new theme. I wouldn't understand. Suddenly, the man who built a multi-million-dollar business from a dirt lot was too simple for her complicated corporate world. The kids felt it first. Benjamin asked why Mom didn't want to hear about his Lego projects. Chloe, with that 13-year-old intuition, told me Mom seemed distracted during their back-to-school shopping. Even Asher, my rock, noticed. Pops, he said to me in the garage, Mom's like happier, but in a way that feels like she's keeping a secret. It's weird. It wasn't just weird. It was calculated. The breaking point for my understanding husband act came on a Saturday morning. I was in the garage, elbow deep in a '67 Mustang restoration. Vivien walked in, dressed in designer workout gear that probably cost more than the transmission I was rebuilding. "Where are you headed?" I asked. "Hot yoga," she said. "Since when do you do yoga? You hate sweating." "Since I decided to take care of myself." "Clay, is that a problem?" I set down my wrench. I really looked at her. She was wearing full makeup for a sweaty yoga class. I didn't say a word. I just smiled. That quiet, knowing smile I use when a customer tells me a car hasn't been in a wreck, when I can clearly see the frame is bent. "Enjoy your class," I said, the moment her SUV cleared the driveway. I went into the house. I wasn't proud of it. I've always believed that once you start snooping, the marriage is already dead. But I've also learned that you don't wait for the fire to consume the house before you look for the matches. Her laptop was password protected. That was new. Her dresser drawers were meticulously organized, almost scrubbed. But then I found it, the digital paper trail. I logged into our joint credit card account and started scrolling. I found charges at restaurants I'd never heard of. Tables for two, always during the day when she was at the office. And then, there it was. A hotel charge, not from Chicago. Right here in town, a boutique hotel downtown. I felt the oxygen leave my lungs. Why would my wife, who owns a 4-bedroom home with a paid-off mortgage, need a hotel room 20 minutes away? I didn't yell. I didn't call her. I just printed the statements. Data doesn't lie. People do. I let her dig her own grave. And I was just getting started with the shovel. 3 weeks after the yoga discovery, Vivien decided to play her biggest card. I was sitting on the couch, half watching the news, when she came in. She didn't sit next to me. She sat on the far end, as if my presence was something she had to endure. "Clay, I need to tell you something," she said. Her voice was thin, brittle. "I'm listening." "Viv, I'm pregnant." The world stopped. For a second, I thought I'd misheard. We were in our mid-40s. We'd had the 3 is enough talk years ago. Vivien had been adamant. She'd even talked about a permanent procedure after Benjamin. "Pregnant?" I repeated. "Are you sure?" She nodded. But she wasn't happy. There were no tears of joy, no miracle talk. She looked terrified. She looked like a woman who had been backed into a corner by her own biology. "How far along?" I asked. My mind was already doing the math. It's a habit of mine, calculating the margin. "About 6 weeks," she whispered. 6 weeks. I went back in my mind. 6 weeks ago, she was in Chicago. 6 weeks ago, she was glowing from her leadership training. "That's unexpected," I said. I moved to hug her, and it was like hugging a marble statue. She was rigid, cold. "I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow to confirm everything," she said, pulling away. "I'll go with you." "No," she snapped. "I mean, it's just routine. You're busy at the dealership. I'll handle it." Since when was our 4th child routine, with Asher, Chloe, and Benjamin? I was at every appointment. I held her hand through every ultrasound. I knew the name of every nurse. Now I was being benched. "Viv, you don't seem happy," I said, testing the air. "I'm just overwhelmed. Clay, work is a lot. This is a lot. I just need some time." She went upstairs, leaving me in the silence of a house that felt like it was built on a sinkhole. That night, I lay in bed next to her, listening to her breathe. She was curled at the very edge of the mattress, as if touching me would be an admission of guilt. I stared at the ceiling, and the pieces of the puzzle began to click together with a sickening metallic sound. The local hotel room, the Victoria's Secret charges I'd seen on the statement, the hot yoga with full makeup, and now, a baby conceived during a 5-day trip to Chicago. I didn't say a word. I didn't confront her. I just waited for the morning. I knew that the miracle she was carrying wasn't mine. I knew it in my gut and in my business. Your gut is usually right long before the paperwork proves it. The next morning, while Vivien was at her routine appointment, I turned our home into an interrogation room. I started with her suitcase. It had been sitting in the closet for weeks, but I'd never really looked at it. I went through the pockets, the lining, everything. Tucked into the mesh side pocket, hidden behind a travel-sized bottle of lotion, was a receipt. It was from a luxury boutique restaurant in Chicago. The date was the third night of her training. Dinner for two, a bottle of vintage Cabernet, 2 steaks, a shared chocolate lava cake. Total, $480. You don't have a $500 romantic dinner with a colleague to discuss marketing strategies. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to stay cold, calculated. I went to the kitchen drawer and found her old tablet, the one she'd replaced months ago, but never bothered to wipe. It was still synced to her cloud. I sat at the kitchen table, the sun streaming in, mocking me with its brightness. I found her Gmail. It was still logged in. I scrolled through the inbox. Nothing. She was too smart for that. But then I looked at the labels. There was a folder named Project Planning. I clicked it. It wasn't marketing. It was a digital diary of my wife's destruction. Dozens of emails between Vivien and a man named Trevor Walsh. The early ones were professional enough, strategy, client leads. But as I scrolled, the tone shifted. It became Trevor and Viv. It became compliments on her vision and his energy. Then came the email from 2 days before Chicago. Can't wait to have you all to myself, Viv. I've booked the suite, the one with the view of the lake. We don't have to pretend for 5 whole days. I want every second. I felt a surge of nausea so strong I had to grip the edge of the table. Trevor Walsh. I knew the name. He was a high-level executive at one of the firms Vivien partnered with. A smooth-talking corporate climber, my brother had called him once. I printed everything, every email, every receipt, every digital footprint of her betrayal, 22 years of marriage, 3 beautiful children, and a business we built together, all traded for a lakefront suite and a man named Trevor. The worst part wasn't even the affair. It was the arrogance. She was still lying. She was still coming home, eating the dinner I'd helped provide, and pretending that the life growing inside her was mine. She was planning to let me raise another man's child while she continued her project planning. I spent the day at the dealership in a trance. I sold 3 cars and didn't remember a single name. My mind was a loop of those emails. By the time I pulled into the driveway that evening, I wasn't Clay the husband anymore. I was Clay the auditor, and the audit was complete. I walked into the kitchen at 6:30 p.m. The house smelled like pot roast. Vivien was at the stove, humming. She looked domestic. She looked innocent. It was a terrifying performance. How was the doctor? I asked, setting my keys on the counter. Fine, she said, not turning around. Everything is perfect. Baby is healthy. Doctor says I just need to rest more. That's great, Viv. Really? It's a miracle, isn't it? A baby at 42? She finally turned around, a forced smile on her face. It is, Clay. I know it's a shock, but we'll get through it. I have something I want to show you, I said. I pulled the stack of printed emails and receipts from my jacket pocket. I spread them out on the kitchen island like a deck of cards. I didn't say a word. I just waited. I watched her eyes scan the papers. I watched the blood leave her face until she was the color of chalk. I watched her hand go to her stomach, not in a motherly way, but in a protective, panicked gesture. Where did you get these? She whispered. Does it matter? Is the project planning going well? Viv, did Trevor like the steak in Chicago? Did he like the lake view? Clay, you're taking this out of context. Out of context? I laughed, and it was the coldest sound I've ever made. Viv, I have receipts for a hotel room in our own city. I have emails where you're telling this man you can't wait to be in his arms. What's the context for that? Is it a new marketing strategy? She straightened her shoulders, trying to play the indignant corporate director role. Trevor is a colleague. We were under a lot of pressure. It was a moment of weakness. A moment of weakness that lasted 5 months. A moment of weakness that involved a luxury hotel downtown while I was home putting Benjamin to bed. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper. Who's the father, Viv? The silence that followed was heavy. It was the sound of 22 years of marriage shattering. I don't know, she sobbed. Yes, you do. You've known since you got back from Chicago. That's why you couldn't look me in the eye. That's why you didn't want me at the appointment. I gathered the papers. Get out. Clay, please, think about the kids. Think about our family. I am thinking about the kids, I said. I'm thinking about how I'm going to explain to them that their mother is a stranger. Pack a bag. Go to Trevor. Go to your sisters. I don't care. But if you're still in this house in an hour, I'm calling a locksmith and a sheriff. She stood there, tears streaming down her face. But I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a profound sense of done. I'd spent my life building things that lasted. She'd spent 5 days in Chicago, destroying them. The audit was over. The debt was due. The hour she took to pack was the longest 60 minutes of my life. I sat on the porch, watching the neighborhood. It looked the same. The neighbors were mowing their lawns. Kids were riding bikes. But my world was a crime scene. When her car finally pulled out of the driveway, I went inside. I didn't cry. I had to be the rock now. I had to tell the kids. Asher was the hardest. He was 17, practically a man. I told him the truth. I didn't give him the sordid details. But I told him Mom had been dishonest and that she wouldn't be living with us anymore. He didn't say a word at first. He just walked into the garage and started hitting the heavy bag I'd hung for his football training. He hit it until his knuckles bled. Pops, he said, finally stopping. His voice was thick. She really did that to us. For some guy at work, she made her choices. Asher. We have to make ours. Chloe was different. She retreated into her room. She didn't come out for dinner. When I finally got her to open the door, she looked at me with eyes that had aged 5 years in an afternoon. If Mom can lie like that, Dad, how do I know who's real? She asked. That was the poison. That was the real crime. She hadn't just cheated on me. She'd poisoned the well for her children. She'd taught them that love was a performance and loyalty was a suggestion. Benjamin, being only 9, just wanted to know when Mom was coming back for his soccer game. I had to tell him she was staying at Aunt Karen's for a while. I watched the confusion cloud his face, and I felt a rage that was far deeper than the betrayal. Vivien moved in with her sister across town. She called me 50 times a day. She sent emails. She sent her mother to talk to me. Her mother sat in my living room and asked, Clay, don't you believe in forgiveness? I believe in consequences, Martha. I said, Vivien didn't make a mistake. She made a series of deliberate, cold-blooded choices. She stole from our future. She stole from these kids' peace of mind. I'm not the one who needs to seek forgiveness. I hired Jim Patterson. He was the most feared divorce attorney in the state. I told him I wanted everything. The dealership, the house, the primary custody. She's going to fight for the business. Clay, Jim warned me. She's the marketing director. She'll claim she's half the reason for your success. She's the reason for the failure of this family, I said, and I have the receipts to prove she was using company time and joint funds to finance her affair. Let her fight. I've spent 18 years selling cars to people who didn't want them. I know how to win a negotiation. The battle lines were drawn. Vivien thought she could play the overwhelmed wife card. She thought her family would rally and shame me into taking her back. She didn't realize that I'd already begun the process of cutting the rot out of my life, and I was going to make sure that when the dust settled, she was the one standing in the ruins. 6 months after the blowout, the paternity results arrived. I sat in Jim's office. The air smelled of expensive leather and old law books. The envelope was white, sterile, and contained the final verdict on my marriage. I tore it open. My hands didn't shake. I was past that. 0% probability of paternity. I handed the paper to Jim. He adjusted his glasses and nodded. Well, that's that. She can no longer claim child support from you for this baby. In fact, her entire credibility in the custody battle for the other 3 just evaporated. How is she? I asked. I didn't care, but I needed to know the status of my enemy. Not good, Jim said. Trevor Walsh's wife found out about the affair. Apparently, she's a partner at the firm where he works. He was fired for cause. Misuse of company funds for travel expenses. He's being sued by his own firm. And from what I hear, he hasn't spoken to Vivien since the news broke. Karma wasn't just a whisper, it was a landslide. Vivien had given birth 3 weeks prior, a baby girl, Trevor Walsh's daughter. The man she'd risked everything for had abandoned her the second the project planning became a legal liability. Vivien was now a single mother with a newborn, living in a 2-bedroom apartment, working a mid-level job she'd managed to scrape together after Henderson Associates let her go. The divorce hearing was a slaughter. Vivien showed up looking haggard. The glow was long gone. She tried to catch my eye, but I looked through her. I focused on the judge. I focused on the data. Because of her financial dissipation, the money she'd spent on Trevor and the hotel rooms, the judge awarded me the house and the lion's share of the business assets. But the real victory was the custody. Asher, Chloe, and even Benjamin were given the choice. And they chose me. Vivien was granted supervised visitation. The woman who used to run the marketing for a multi-million-dollar dealership was now allowed to see her children for 4 hours on Saturdays in a public park. As we walked out of the courthouse, Vivien's mother approached me. "Are you happy now, Clay? Look at her. She has nothing. She has exactly what she worked for." "Martha," I said. "She wanted new possibilities. Well, here they are. She traded a king for a joker and a home for a hotel room. Don't ask me to feel bad for a woman who burned down her own house just to see if the fire was pretty." I walked to my car. Asher was waiting for me. He was wearing his Ohio State jersey. He'd just signed his letter of intent. "You okay, Pops?" he asked. "I'm better than okay, son. I'm free." We drove back to the house on Maple Street. It was quiet. It was peaceful. The poison was gone. And for the first time in 2 years, the foundation felt solid again. 2 years have passed since the decree was signed. I'm sitting in my new office. It's twice the size of the old one. I just opened my 4th Mooney Motors location. We're franchising now. Turns out, when you're not spending all your emotional energy trying to figure out why your wife is glowing, you can build an empire. Asher is a sophomore at OSU, killing it on the field and in the classroom. He works at the flagship dealership during his breaks. He's got my nose for the business. Chloe is 15 and thriving. She's the head of the debate team. She's learned that the truth is the most powerful weapon in the world. And Benjamin? He's 11, building computers in his room and talking about MIT. Vivien is, well, she's a memory. She works for a small printing firm. She lives in a modest condo. She still sees the kids on weekends. But the relationship is strained. Asher still won't speak to her. Chloe is polite, but the warmth is gone. They see her as a cautionary tale, not a mother. Trevor Walsh disappeared. Last I heard, he was working as a freelance consultant in another state, still dodging lawsuits from his ex-wife. I've started dating again. I met a woman named Sarah. She's a widow, a high school principal. She's grounded, honest, and she doesn't do yoga in full makeup. We take it slow. We talk. We actually talk. The other day, I was cleaning out the garage and I found that old 1967 Mustang. I'd finally finished the restoration. It was a beauty, deep blue, chrome shining like a mirror. I took it for a drive down Maple Street, the wind in my hair, the engine purring like a contented cat. I realized then that Vivien thought she was trading up. She thought Trevor and the corporate life were the prize. She didn't realize that I was the prize. The life we'd double built, the loyalty we had, the children who worshipped her. That was the wealth. She traded gold for tinsel. Sometimes people ask me if I'm bitter. I tell them no. Bitterness is a heavy weight to carry, and I have too much work to do. Vivien taught me a valuable lesson. Trust is earned every single day, not once at an altar. And the most important deal you'll ever make isn't on a car lot. It's the one you make with yourself to never settle for less than respect. I'm Clayton Mooney. I have my kids, I have my business, and I have my self-respect. And in the end, that's the only glow that actually lasts. Years later, I heard she still keeps that hotel receipt from Chicago. A reminder of the most expensive dinner she ever ate. It cost her a husband, a home, and the love of her children. I just hope the lava cake was worth it. I didn't say a word when she left. I didn't have to. The silence of her new life says it all.